general point on this issue. Obviously, I support the legislation. I think the tragedy of the so-called recovery over the last number of years is the fact that we haven't had the people central to our focus in terms of the measures we've sought to implement. Professor Sean Barrett, as a member of the Senate, frequently used to speak of the secret backstairs in the Department of Finance for which bankers seem to have exclusive access. And it certainly seems like that when we see good legislation being put forward that does put the people who have suffered, the people who have ultimately sacrificed in beginning that recovery, Minister, which seems to be taking hold here in Dublin but not else throughout the country. And I think that we have to begin to embrace these issues. The constitutional argument is nonsense, frankly. When I put forward the Family Home Bill in July 2011 in the Senate to give protections to families against losing their family home, that same argument was put forward. But nobody would share the Attorney General's advice on that occasion, and yet for 5 years we've had many families put to the pin of their collars, many put out of their homes in that period, while we obsess about the profitability of the banks. And as Deputy McGrath has eloquently outlined the level of profitability that AIB have managed to put together over the last number of years, looking after their cost of funds, looking after a margin for themselves, and still reducing rates 4 times over the period, shows that it can be done. So it's time, Minister, that we did put the people central to this and put the people's representative, this House, in command. And if the central bank aren't anxious to have those powers, frankly, it's not their call. That's a matter for this House to decide. And I think that we should face up to our own responsibilities and equip them with the tools that the people demand that they have to give them the protections they need. The balance is wrong between the profitability focus on the banks and looking after the people. As far as I'm concerned, throughout the process, the banks have only superficially engaged with people. There's all talks of split mortgages, there's talks of warehousing, there's talks of restructuring and so on. The reality on the ground is very much different. Yes, if you're one of the big boys on the back of the Sunday Independent, you get a couple of 100 million wiped out. And those self-same people are flying around in choppers and so on. But the person in my constituency who texted me this morning, who told me that they received a notice to surrender their house from Start Mortgages. What are we doing for that person? I mean, what is in the state's interest to put that family out of their home? And these are the kinds of measures we have to look at. And I hope, in discussing with colleagues on this side of the House, that we will regurgitate the Family Home Bill to give those kinds of protections to families throughout the country, because they deserve it for the pain they've put up with. And while the banks in their ivory towers enjoy the fruits of profitability and bonuses and so on, once again, we owe it to the people to ensure that we are doing something for them, like that family who got the notice this morning from Start Mortgages to surrender their house. As I said, we've had superficial engagement. Why, Minister, are you not suggesting to the banks, look, it's time that we followed the continental example, where there are intergenerational mortgages to help people? How many families do you know who've been offered one of those? How many 45-year-olds do you know that was taken aside who were in arrears and told, you know what, you're a good bet. You're going to get employment again. You're going to make money again. So we'll add 15 years to your term. We'll push it out for you. We'll warehouse half of it. Why is that not happening? Because we're not interested in doing it. Because we blindly leave here, go to the department, and the advisors say, well, Minister, the practice is this. Or the Attorney General says, I don't know how that will go down in the forecourts. I don't know whether we were going to be able to accept that. So for once, let the House show the leadership that the people wanted to have. And I very much hope that this bill, and Deputy McGrath started, and others of us in the Senate, with a package of measures going back to June and July 2011. And sadly, with your own government in control, yes, you have the banks back in profitability, but you forgot the most important thing, and that's the people. We all heard many times about the systemic nature of the banks, the systemic value of the banks to society. Well, what about the systemic nature of the people? So this is the beginning in terms of the legislative proposals of Fianna Fáil and opposition. I hope that others in the House embrace what we're doing, vote it through this evening, vote down your amendment, which is nonsense, quite frankly, and we will follow up with more things. Try and put the people central to the focus of the work of these houses. Thank you.
Thank you.